It's not a deadlift, not a squat, not a bench. It's just cardio, and it can be super boring. The reason why people in America are so fat is because of fat. We need a lot of soldiers in the war on carbs because so many people are addicted to food. What I'm learning is that it's cool to have foods that are satiating, but it's also amazing to have foods that are also satisfying. The 10-minute walks is the ultimate fat guy exercise. Someone that just wakes up in the morning, has a muffin, I don't get it. All right, today we're gonna dive into nutrition and cardio for fat people. Jesse Burdick has coined this fat shaming. Types of cardio that's for meatheads. Not everybody loves to do their cardio. Not everybody loves to do these extra activities that are just not as cool. They're just not, it's not a deadlift, not a squat, not a bench. It's just cardio, and it can be super boring to participate in cardiovascular activities. Yeah, it could be kind of annoying to, do some of these exercises, or to go on a treadmill, or to go on an elliptical or Stairmaster. But it's really not much to ask somebody to do, 20 minutes or so of that occasionally, a couple times a week. I know a lot of bodybuilders, they like keeping their cardio around year round. I know Sam Sulek promotes a lot of cardio training. And I think it could be great. And I think it's a good activity. I think it's worthwhile. It's not really too different than the 10-minute walks, but the 10-minute walks is the ultimate fat guy exercise because it doesn't really require much. It doesn't require you to take a pre-workout. It doesn't require you to have on special clothes. It literally doesn't require anything other than like halfway decent weather. You don't want it to be 3 degrees out with 30-mile-an-hour winds to go do your 10-minute walk, and you don't want it to be 105 out. But with the exception of those things going on, and maybe some rain or something like that, 10-minute walks are super simple to do, super easy to do. We know that walking can be really beneficial, but I think if we're being honest with ourselves, we know that walking just is not quite enough. I think it would be more wise to do your walking with a weighted vest. And I think that is kind of the ultimate fat guy, fat people exercise to do. And the reason why I'm saying fat people, and the reason why we're saying fat shaming, is just because a lot of bigger people, they find it super uncomfortable to do a lot of these activities. And I realize that, and a lot of the bigger people in powerlifting and stuff like that, they just don't enjoy doing the cardio training. And finding things that you enjoy is really critical, because how often or how long are you going to do something that you don't enjoy? You might do it for a day, you might do it for a couple weeks, you might do it for a couple months, but you probably won't really stick to it. And again, that's why the 10-minute walk is so appetizing, is because the 10-minute walk just doesn't require that much of yourself. You could even tell yourself, hey, every day when I go to work, I'm going to actually show up a little bit earlier. I'm going to get there 20 minutes early, and I'm going to go on a 10-minute walk. Or even before you get in your car in the morning, it could be your cue to start your day. Before you get in your car to drive to work, you do a 10-minute walk. Another cue for a 10-minute walk could be lunchtime. Instead of, trying to figure out where you're going to lunch and getting a parking ticket for parking in the wrong spot for too long and rushing around and trying to get back to work on time in the hour time slot that you have for your lunch, you could simply prepare your meals, eat your lunch, and have plenty of time for a 10-minute walk. And so there's plenty of opportunities and areas where you can mix in a 10-minute walk. I would really like to see a lot of people try to get up a little bit early and watch the sun come up and to get their 10-minute walk in, because I think the sun has a lot of power. It's very powerful to see the sun, and I think some sun exposure can actually help improve upon a lot of the habits that we have. The lack of sunlight and the tons and tons of blue light that we're consuming on a daily basis can really wreak havoc on your hunger signals. It can really wreak havoc on your decision making for the day, because of the cascade of hormones that happens when we see the sun and we get in the sun, the vitamin D production, and along with a lot of other things that's helping to control ghrelin, which is one of your hunger hormones. Also, getting in some sunlight, getting in some red light has been shown to help with glucose regulation as well. So there's a lot of reasons to get the sun, and it's one extra piece of the puzzle that could really help make a big difference for you, because it's so hard to avoid a lot of junk food and stuff like that. Some people might think that it's, maybe too much of a request to ask somebody to throw on a weighted vest when they're already maybe potentially a heavier person, but heavier person or not, you can kind of view this video today as a guide to doing, cardio activities that you may actually enjoy, cardio activities that you may actually like. Along with, I will give a little bit of nutrition too, because I think there's some low-hanging fruit here that is just so simple to do. So I'll just briefly run through a couple nutritional principles that are just so easy to add to your lifestyle. And this is without taking anything away. So this is without really any other adjustments. But if you just start to work on consuming more protein, that can be something that could help drive down hunger and drive down cravings. So eating more protein, lean sources of meat, you got eggs and dairy. Those are all really good options, in my opinion. I think most people are better off going with more low fat to no fat type of dairy products. The reason for that is the fat calories just really creep up on you at the end of the day. Personally, I think it's a healthier choice to eat the things that do have fat in them. But from a caloric and from an energy standpoint, I don't think most people can afford them. So in that case, I would say go with the lower fat stuff as much as you can, the best that you can, unless you're somebody that's going very low carb. If you're going low carb, then you can have some fat in your dairy and some of the other foods that you're consuming. But real easy thing to do is to increase that protein. That's going to drive down hunger. It's been shown to drive down the overall amount of calories, the overall amount of energy that you're consuming through a process called protein leveraging. So if you just start to increase not only your protein, not only your grams of protein, but mainly the percentage of your protein. So having your diet go from 12% protein to 20% protein is going to guaranteed result in some weight loss, because you're not going to be consuming as much energy from fats and carbohydrates. So it should be easy for your body to actually burn a little bit of body fat when you bring up the percentage of protein, at least somewhat. It will, most likely, especially if some of those calories are coming from fat, it will put you into a little bit of a caloric deficit. The other thing to keep in mind with nutrition is to just keep things simple and just to eat the things that have always been around forever. Eat the things that are native to this earth, that are, not, man-made. I guess that, that term you can investigate pretty harshly, and you can kind of say that everything's man-made, because it sort of is. We raise the cows and then we slaughter the cows, and everything's like mass produced and whatever, however you want to say it. But anyway, you get my point. Stick to, lean sources of meat, lean sources of protein. And then from there, you have vegetables and you have fruit. Potatoes can be part of this conversation. I believe a potato is a vegetable. But any types of potatoes, they're all fair game. They're all great. One thing you have to be a little bit careful of when it comes to any carbohydrates that we're going to mix into the mix here is blending it with fats or using it with fats. So if you're going to have a potato, you could put some butter on it, but you can't put a lot of butter on it. Just if you're trying to like lose weight and you're trying to get in better shape, it's just not a good idea to mix carbohydrates and fats together. They taste too delicious. It's too tempting. You most likely are going to overdo it. But anyway, I would say potatoes are fine. I like potatoes. I like potatoes over rice personally, because I think it's easier to consume a lot of rice. It's a little harder to consume a crazy amount of potato. I really don't know anybody that's like eaten two pretty big regular potatoes. It's like they're dry and they're just, Potato has a really high satiety rating, meaning that it will keep you full, and it will also keep you full for like longer period of time. I also like plain Greek yogurt on my potato. It's actually really good. And let's not forget, carbohydrates that are heated and cooled turn into what is called a resistant starch. A resistant starch, it takes a regular type of carbohydrate, a regular complex carbohydrate from rice or potato, and turns it into something that won't get digested. So these types of prebiotic fibers, they're not going to have the same impact as if you were to eat an equivalent amount of carbohydrate. Supposedly, I think that, I think I've heard around 30%. So if you have 100 grams of carbs from rice and you heated that rice up and then you cooled it, like say you put it in the fridge or something, it's going to have a good amount of prebiotic fibers, and you're going to knock that 100 grams of carbohydrates from the rice down to about 70. I've heard some people say it knocks it in half, but I don't think it makes like that huge of a difference, but it is a difference. So it's something to consider. And yes, it can be warmed back up again, because I've asked that question many times and no one was answering me on it. And finally I pinned down Joel Green on our podcast, and I said, listen, you got to just tell us. And he went on this rant, this ramble about a bunch of other stuff, but then I brought him back and he said, yes, you can, heat it. So it can be heated and cooled and heated again. But that is a way to kind of reduce the carbohydrates from the carbohydrates that you're eating, while you're also still eating the same amount of carbohydrates, because food volume is important. So the next ultimate fat guy hack is vegetables. Eat vegetables. Now, vegetables can be a delivery system for a whole giant monstrosity of lots of bullshit. So be careful of that as well. We don't want to saute them in a bunch of grease and butter and all these different, I know that those things can enhance the flavor. If you're going to be modest with the butter, or you're going to be, not modest, if you're going to just add a little bit of butter, stuff like that, probably no harm, no foul, but most people that are fat, they don't know how to do that. They don't know how to be reasonable. So don't add butter to it. I think you're just better off just not messing with that. What you could do is you could cook your vegetables like if you were to make some steak. Like this is what I do quite often. I'll cook up a Piedmontese steak. Let's say I cook up like a New York strip. I might cut that side of fat off of there that comes on a New York strip. I'll cook the steak in the pan with the fat, and that fat helps the steak to cook better, and it helps to get a little crustiness on the steak. You get a little bit of a char on there, and then after that, after I cooked my steak, I'll cook my vegetables in there, and now you're basically having meat flavored vegetables. So that could be quite delicious, and that's a good way to add some flavor to some of those foods. If you can be reasonable with a little bit of butter and a little bit of olive oil, stuff like that, I don't think it's super harmful, but we tend to just get out of control with that. Vegetables are going to bring up food volume substantially. If you have things like arugula is really awesome too, because arugula can play a role in nitric oxide production. And some people will even take arugula as a supplement to help increase nitric oxide. I personally like the flavor of arugula, so I will use it fairly often. If you cook it, it's going to shrink way down into something super small. You're kind of better off just eating it when it's more on the raw side. I also am a huge fan of onions. I like fermented onions, pickled onions. I like red onions. I like regular onions. Just cook them in a pan. Absolutely amazing. Makes everything stink, but tastes amazing. Along with onions, I also like peppers. And a lot of times from one of the local stores around here, I will buy like a pepper onion combo, like a fajita mix basically, and I'll throw some Mexican seasoning on there, a taco seasoning type stuff. I might throw all that in a pan with some steak or after I'm done cooking the steak, and it will be completely unbelievable. It tastes amazing. But the vegetables, you can also make a giant bowl of salad, and the salad is going to help give you a lot of volume. What I recommend for dressings is to try to find things that just don't have any oil in them, because again, that's going to bump your calories way up. And again, keep in mind what I'm laying out right here. This is just in addition to what you regularly eat. I'm not saying to only eat this way, but if you were to only eat this way, you'll get ripped. You'll get in really great shape. But if you eat this way in conjunction with the normal bullshit junk that you eat, you'll still probably get in pretty good shape. So this is just like a guide to give you a bunch of stuff that you can add and some tricks that you can add to your nutrition, and the cardio will be the same. It's going to be things that you can just add to your day. There's not any, I'm not trying to subtract anything away from you. What I would say is that on a daily basis, if you have a habit of eating carbs and fat in combination with each other in the form of a sandwich, in the form of a burrito, in the form of pizza, in the form of ice cream, I would say work on slowing that train down a bit. Work on not doing that nearly as often. If you want something crunchy and you're used to eating chips, I'm sorry, but you're gonna have to switch to something slightly different. You can get Legendary Foods has some chips that are just absolutely amazing. They're better than the Quest chips, I think. They're real modest in the fat calories and only has 150 calories in a bag. And they make a bunch of different flavors, and I think they're very good, and I think it's a nice alternative. Also, you know, you can, if you want snappy, crunchy stuff, then maybe you can get some vegetables to crunch on. Maybe you can get some carnivore crisps. Those are crunchy as well. Maybe you can find some good beef jerky. A lot of jerky has like no fat in it and just deliver some protein. Sometimes they have some sugar in it, but I don't sweat sugar that much. I don't think it's that huge of a deal in the grand scheme of things. So the vegetables are going to really help to add some bulk to your diet. It's also going to add some fiber. I'm not necessarily a huge fan of fiber. I don't think we need nearly as much as everyone claims, but fiber does slow down digestion, and it helps things kind of, it helps you feel full for longer. So there's 3 things that will help you feel full for a longer period of time. One is protein, the second being fiber, and the third being fat. So that's where the things can get tricky sometimes, is the fat can slow down the absorption of all the nutrients that you consume as well. And so while fat doesn't have a high satiety rating, something like a ribeye might go down pretty smooth, or some 80-20 ground beef, you might be able to eat a lot of it pretty quickly. But the aftermath, after you've eaten that food, you might be able to go 4, 5, 6 hours without anything else, because that food slows down the absorption rate, that fat slows down the absorption rate, it slows down how you're digesting all of the food that you just consumed. And so that could work out really nicely. But first is protein, second, I would say, would be fiber and vegetables, and then third, I would say fat is in there too. And so with everything I just said, I was promoting that you eat like leaner cuts of meat and so on. But even when you have leaner cuts of meat, there's still going to be fat in there. And the fat calories at the end of the day are going to creep up. And the reason why people in America are so fat is because of fat. People in America are so fat because of fat. They're not so fat because of sugar. They're fat because of fat. And I've been saying this for a really long time, even when I was very strict with doing like keto, even when I was messing around with like carnivore diets, I recognized that people's calories are getting jacked up through the roof because of the amount of fat that they're consuming. And if anyone that was doing the standard American diet was able to get their fat grams down to maybe something like 60, grams of fat in a day, they wouldn't have gained fat in the first place. That's my belief. I believe in it very strongly, but I think that most people are way upwards of probably 100 grams of fat a day, and they're getting probably over 1,000 calories of the 3,000 or 2,700 calories they're probably eating every single day. I don't know what the average is in the United States for calories, but obviously it's too high. And I think what's responsible for that is not keeping an eye on the fat calories. People do know a lot about sugar nowadays, and a lot of times it's sugar and carbohydrates coming together. We know that when you mix sweet with salty and with fat, then you just end up with something that just tastes way too delicious. It's way too hard to not overeat that. But as stated by Lane Norton and many other people, a donut has way more calories that come from fat than it does calories that come from sugar. A peanut butter cup, same thing. A Snickers bar, same thing. Ice cream, same thing. Pizza, same thing. A sandwich with cheese and mayo on it, same thing. Like, it just happens over and over and over and over again. And we don't really realize that we are getting just massively sabotaged by large amounts of fat, even in a salad. Let's say you go to a restaurant and you have a salad. You're like, oh, I'm gonna get the Caesar salad. I'm gonna be good today. Well, it's got croutons on it. That's gonna have some fat in it. And the dressing that you're using. If you just use all the dressing that they give you, or if you allow them to pour the dressing on there, you probably just consumed anywhere between 30 to 50 grams of fat. So congratulations on that. And Merry Christmas. You probably weren't expecting that. That is an enormous amount of calories to get from something. The whole point of vegetables is that they don't have calories in them. The whole point of vegetables is they don't really have much nutrients in them at all. I know people want to try to sell you on the fact they have vitamins and minerals, and they do have those things, but it's in pretty small amounts. And when it comes to calories, most vegetables don't have dick for calories. They don't have much of anything in there. That's the whole point in consuming them. The point in consuming them is not to dip them in blue cheese. The point in consuming them is not to dip them in ranch or hummus or whatever else you think is healthy. Is probably just some creamy bullshit that's not actually, it's making it taste good, but making it taste better at the cost of adding calories is actually counterproductive to the fact that you may think that vegetables are healthy. So you just have completely screwed yourself over without even really realizing it. And I think that's what's happening to most people. I think a lot of people are well-meaning. I think they're going through their day. I do think a lot of Americans are changing their tune when they wake up. I don't think as many people are having bagels with cream cheese. By the way, a bagel with cream cheese, you might as well have a donut. It's the same thing. There's no difference between a bagel with cream cheese and a donut. There's zero difference. And a muffin, you guys know a muffin is cake, a muffin is dessert. Like, most of these things don't have a good place in our diets. And also too, like, what's the point in having one of those? For me, I don't get it, because I like to overdo shit. And so I don't understand. Why would you only have, like, if I was to eat something like that and I knew I could knock out like 7 slices or 8 slices or 10 slices of pizza, I'd be in on that game. That would be fun. And I'd probably eat before I went there, so I would eat even less pizza. I would try to control it in some way.
The way that I use methylene blue is very similar to the way that you're using it. I don't use it every day. I think things that push that button to change your mood, you might want to be a little cautious with it. In my opinion, and the feelings that I get from methylene blue, it does change my mood a little bit. It's a mood enhancer. When I go out and run, I feel like I do have a little bit more endurance. I do feel like I can breathe a little bit better, but that could also be, I've been training very hard as well, so it could be an adaptation to that as well. But as we've had, David Herrera and many other people have come on the show before, they basically just say methylene blue is a electron donor, and it allows the body to utilize energy just more efficiently. And I don't know if I can feel that per se, but but I know that I feel better when I'm running, when I'm using Methylene Blue.
Yeah, post sessions of grappling, that's when I usually use. I use it 2 or 3 times a week. Post sessions of jiu-jitsu, I always feel like I have more energy, like much more energy than I typically have, which makes me understand that, you know, if I did want to go for longer sessions, I could, but it also helps me understand that I'm going to be recovering better for my next session the next day, which is a big deal. But yeah, I think that if you guys, first off, this stuff is great because it's third-party tested. Methylene Blue in other sources, like the stuff that you'll see on Amazon or like random websites, there's no regulation. So a lot of people have levels of toxicity from the supplement because it's not dosed correctly. And there are other things in that Methylene Blue. Again, this is something that is lab made. It's not you know what I mean? So you got to be careful. And this is why we like using this stuff, because we know it's not going to mess us up.
You can go on their website. You can go on the Transcriptions website and you can get a report of the third-party tested Methylene Blue and double, triple check it for yourself. In addition to that, they have the Canatine, which I have not used that much, but when I have used it pre-workout, I did notice I get a zip from it. I think it has nicotine in it, along with a couple other things to go along with the Methylene Blue. So do yourselves a favor, check out Transcriptions, check out what they got. Strength is never weakness, weakness never strength. Catch you guys later.
But someone that just wakes up in the morning, has a muffin, I don't get it. Or just like a bagel. Like if I had a bagel, I'd have 5 bagels, or I'd have 3 or 4 bagels. And anyway, I think a lot of people are well-meaning. They're trying to get through their day the best they can, and I think they do serve themselves pretty good, and then they screw themselves over later on in the day. As the day progresses, they didn't make that great of a decision at lunch, and then they made a worse decision at dinner. They got home a little bit later than they thought. They're super hungry. They raid the pantry and they just talk to the kids and the wife, and everyone's like, yeah, let's get pizza. Let's get DoorDash. And then it's just awful. It's an awful, awful decision, and people need to take more control of it. And what I'm proposing to you, some of these strategies I just mentioned for you to be less fat, just utilize some simple nutrition. You have meat, you have fruit, you have vegetables, and you have some starches. You have some rice, you have some potatoes. Even something like pasta. Pasta is awesome. But what do we do with pasta? We throw a bunch of sauce on it, a bunch of other things on it. Usually those sauces have not only sugar, but they also have fat in them. So you have to be conscious. You have to really be paying attention to everything. If you can get some pasta and you were to add something that just doesn't add a whole lot of fat to it, pasta's of zero consequence to just about anybody. I know there's people that, talk about the gluten and stuff, but, aside from some people having autoimmune disorders and some people having real issues with gluten, I think you can eat tons of pasta and not have any problem. I think you can eat tons of bread and not have any problems either. Bread is a vehicle. Bread is a vehicle for more calories. Bread is a vehicle for fat calories. Even though bread doesn't have hardly any fat in it, you're going to dump a bunch of mayo on there, or you're going to use cheese on there, because the sandwich that you're eating that has like turkey on it or chicken or whatever it is, that stuff in combination with bread is just too dry to try to figure out how to eat. So then what are we left with? We're left with like trying to throw like pickles on there or tomatoes or mustard, right? And all those things are like decent options, but why even bother with a sandwich at that point? And that's what helps you to eliminate bread. You're like, that whole thing's a waste of time. I'd rather have a lean cut of steak with a potato. It's going to taste way better, and it's going to do way more for you. So in your effort to try to lose some weight, I think it's a good idea to think about what is like a double, triple plus. What is like a double, triple bonus rather than like a double, triple negative? How do I amplify what it is I'm doing? And you amplify what you're doing by knocking out some of the things that I just mentioned. If you have a potato that's heated and cooled, it has prebiotic fibers in it. If you eat a lean steak from Good Life Proteins, if you utilize Piedmontese steaks, then you're utilizing a steak that's super lean and you're protein leveraging. So now you're protein leveraging. You also have some prebiotic fibers. Remember, we talked about fiber being awesome from the potato, which it's not a ton of fiber in a potato, but heated and cooled, it's going to have a little bit more. And then our third thing is fat, which you're already getting some good fats in from the steak. It's not like the steak, even though the Piedmontese steaks are lean, it's not like they don't have any fat in them at all. They have some. So those are the things that you want to try to do, because that meal is going to be satisfying. It's going to be satiating. It's going to help, especially because you had, like what I do a lot of times now, more recently, I'll take a sweet potato. I might put some honey on there rather than using butter, which is probably going to be a little bit more calorically dense. Throwing some honey on there is going to be awesome. It's just going to give me a little bit more energy, a little bit more sugar, a little bit more carbohydrate. And what I'm learning is that it's cool to have foods that are satiating, but it's also amazing to have foods that are also satisfying as well. And the difference for me is, do I still want to eat something else afterwards? And a lot of times if I have something savory and salty, then my body wants to go the other direction and it wants to go for something sweet. And so I sometimes will just combine those two things in the same meal, such as something like a teriyaki chicken bowl, right? Again, if you go to a restaurant, you might be screwing yourself over because that teriyaki chicken bowl is going to have a crazy amount of sauce on it. So the sugar is going to be through the roof. The chicken that they use might be cooked in oil, and or it's most likely chicken thighs and not chicken breast. So you got to learn, and it's really important to cook at home. Even though I'm trying not to take a bunch of stuff away from you guys, it's important that you learn, you start to cook from home. If you cook from home more often, you're going to notice some really great improvement in your nutrition, in your diet. Ryan, you brewing up any questions over there for diet stuff so far?
Yeah. If fat is the kind of the culprit for making us fat over all these years, I guess, why have you been waging a war on carbs and not waging a war on fat?
Waging a war on fat can be a real bitch. And so for me, I have always liked protein and fats. I love the flavor. I love the taste of it. But over the years, I've also have noticed that if I do low carb for too long, in terms of weight loss, it's just not as effective for me. So I like to transition from one diet to another here and there. And basically what I'm talking about nowadays is that if you want to consume more fat, it's just a really good idea to lower your carbohydrates quite a bit. And even with that, I would say that in accordance to some of the new knowledge that I have, I think for most people, it'd be a good idea for them to utilize different diet strategies different times of the year, or utilize different diet strategies in accordance to their goals. And so with some of the goals that I have now, where I want to be more explosive and I want to be faster, just so much of the information, the data, and the people I've been communicating with, they say, look, man, I think your whole entire thing is just going to be easier with carbs. The war on carbs has started, and the war on carbs will continue to tread onward, because we need a lot of soldiers in the war on carbs, because so many people are addicted to food. And they're not just addicted to carbs, they're addicted to carbohydrates and fats. But it's just easier to say carbs because people view a donut as carbs, they view pizza as carbs. And when you mention carbs to people, unless you're talking to a bodybuilder's like oatmeal, rice, potato, boom, there's their carbs. They don't even think of anything else. A bodybuilder, their brain's not drifting off into thinking about, a ice cream cake or peanut butter cups or pizza and so on. It might drift off here and there, but yeah, for me, the war on carbs is about waging a war on something that can be highly addictive. I don't necessarily think that, I actually don't think it really matters that much whether people think or believe or don't believe that sugar is addictive. I just don't even think, I think that conversation is a little bit of a waste of time. I just think that there's a lot of bad habits surrounding those highly processed foods. And I've even changed my tune on highly processed foods, because I think I agree with Ron Penna and what they're doing at Legendary Foods, and Ron previously was with Quest, and what they're doing is they're saying, hey, you know what? I think technology actually is our way out of this. And I think highly processed foods, not only are they good, I think they could be made great. And I think they could be a route for us to get out of here, for us to get to kind of higher ground with these lower carb interventions along with higher protein. So what they've done at Legendary Foods is they're bringing up that protein percentage in their foods. Again, I think the chips that they have like, maybe there's 20 grams. I think there's like 20 grams of protein in something that has like 150 or maybe 200 calories in it. That's pretty amazing. That's pretty spectacular. So the war on carbs, it will continue forever. And I didn't really wage a war on fat because it's just not practical. I think it's harder to do. It's hard to manage. When I eat out, when I go and travel, it's very, very simple. Even when I've traveled overseas, it's very simple just to nix a lot of carbs, to get rid of a lot of carbohydrates. And I'm not even talking about zero carbohydrates, but it's pretty easy. Most places in the world that you go to, most restaurants have some sort of eggs on the menu, have some sort of meat on the menu. And it's really not that hard to swerve away from some of these things. Even at fast food chains and stuff like that, you guys have seen me over the years having like In-N-Out Burger and McDonald's and different things like that. I probably, I most likely wouldn't really do that nowadays, just because I think that even when you're lower carb, I think it's a good idea to pull down some of those fats still, because I think that it's still too easy to overeat. Fat makes everything way easier to overeat. Carbohydrates makes it a little bit easier to overeat, but it's going to be the carbohydrates and fats together. Think about it. Again, let's just take some chicken, and you slice up some chicken and you get some rice. Rice and chicken together is going to be easier to eat than just plain chicken breast. But it's going to be hard to like really crush an incredibly crazy amount of calories with just rice and plain chicken breast, because you'll just get to a point where you get full and where you're just like no longer really interested in it anymore. As opposed to if we just took that same bowl and we took the plain chicken and we used chicken thighs, and in addition to the chicken thighs, we added teriyaki sauce. Well, now we're having like a hell of a party here, and it's going to be way easier to really consume that, because we mixed sugar, fats, and salts together, and that is the recipe that makes it super easy to overeat. Also, another reason for just, another reason for just changing some of my perspectives is because my perspectives change. They do change. I do change my mind on stuff here and there. I do utilize different strategies. And even in the book, The War on Carbs, I did talk about periods of time in your life where it's a good idea to utilize some carbohydrates. And I called it the PED diet, the performance enhancing diet. And I said, like, basically when you get yourself a little bit leaner and when you get your shit together and you get things more under control, then it would be a good idea to bring in some carbohydrates.
What if I don't like cook for myself? I'm somebody that completely relies on my wife. She does all the cooking. It's been this way for a long time. I don't go to the grocery store, haven't been in years. How do I kind of break out of that cycle of having somebody else kind of handle the food?
I do think communication is really critical. So sharing with your significant other, or, I know some teenage kids sometimes in this predicament, they're like, my mom doesn't make that. But sharing this with your significant other and saying, hey, this is really important to me. I'd really like to make some of these changes. I think a lot of times the wife or the person that's cooking would probably also enjoy some of the results they could get from making some changes. So maybe they can kind of meet you halfway. I do think that we have to take personal responsibility. My wife cooks pretty much every night, but so do I. My daughter cooks and my son cooks. We all cook, and we all sometimes end up eating together as well, even though we all kind of cook different things. we cook different things, but we try to sit down together here and there. Not as much anymore. My kids are getting older. Daughter's 17, my son's 21. So we don't all huddle up the same way that we did. But that was always a really important aspect of our family, is to sit down and just enjoy a meal together. But yeah, each person was sometimes eating something a little different. When you have somebody that maybe isn't into the quest, or maybe someone's significant other is just thin and they don't care, or maybe they're happy with where their body's at, they don't have the same goals as you. Again, I think just some communication. I don't know, if someone would be with somebody that so staunchly is against somebody trying to go after a particular goal. Now, if someone's trying to go after the goal of like being like completely shredded, and they have like, they don't want any of this or any of that, like that could be a little bit more complicated. But, cooking some things up here and there, some chicken, some turkey, some different things like that, and just not doing anything else to it. It's like, well, the other person, if they wanted to add sauces and wanted to add oils and different things to it, they could just add that after it's cooked up, And so that's a lot of times what we do in my house. I know, like even when I get together for family gatherings, everybody knows I don't want dressing on salad, and I'm going to use my own stuff on a salad. I'll use something either that doesn't have oil in it. I'll use like a balsamic vinaigrette, or I'll use apple cider vinegar. And so before they go and mix the bowl with like a bunch of oil and stuff, they just usually wait for me to scoop some stuff up, and then I do my thing with it, and then they do the rest of it the way that everybody else likes it. So some small adjustments like that, but I do think it's important. I think the grocery store, unless you got the means and the money to, just have it delivered to the house, I think the grocery store is a fairly necessary evil. I personally hate Costco. I don't like going it. Like I just think Costco is a giant waste of time. I know that people think that they're saving money and they think the other places are more expensive, but I think it's like, dude, you just drove past 4 grocery stores on your way to Costco. And so to me, I think Costco just cost us a lot of time. And then you're in there and you end up just buying a lot of stuff that you didn't mean to. And that could happen at any grocery store as well, but that's my little rant on Costco. But aside from that, I think you got to go to the grocery store here and there. I'm at a grocery store at least once a week, even with the amount of shopping that my wife does from like Instacart or wherever she's ordering stuff from, because she hates the grocery store. So she never goes. We, as a family, we also utilize something called Home Chef. So Home Chef is a food delivery company, and then my wife just tries to make like fairly reasonable, healthy options from there. And then we usually just add meat to it as well. We'll add some certified Piedmontese meat to it. We might add, chicken breast or something to it, just to give it more meat and to give it like a little bit more protein. But there's healthy options just everywhere. And so I think it's important for couples and for families to talk about what are some good, reasonable options. Because like maybe you don't really know how to cook that good, and maybe you would like to have variety. Maybe you would like to have an Italian dinner, but you're not really sure how to go about doing it, and we cook up all this stuff at my house. There's, Instagram and YouTube, and I did Smelly's Kitchen. I showed people like the meat sauce I would make, and a lot of times I would just make that with way less fat by utilizing very lean ground beef. I know people, when they make like meatballs and stuff, they usually use like pork, lamb, and ground beef, and that just tastes amazing. But that does bring the calories up quite a bit. And so those are all some simple things that you can do, and you just have to, be aware of the sauces and the tomato sauce and all the different things that you're using. But I think that all of us, we really need to take control. You can't be blaming anything on anybody else. I see that happen with couples a lot, where you're a team, you're a team. But at the same time, you're not totally connected at the hip, and sometimes you'll have to make some decisions for yourself. And if your significant other doesn't understand that you just want to be in better shape, even if you're already in good shape, that you want to be in better shape, if they don't understand that, then I don't really think that makes any sense for them to not understand it, especially if you're explaining to them why you feel it's important to you and your goals. Then I would hope that they would want to support those goals, just like any other goals that you might have. All right, let's move into talking a little bit more about cardio. I did mention in the beginning, I talked about the 10-minute walks, and then I went on a rant about nutrition forever. But we'll rein some of this in with some good cardio activity. So number one activity is walking. Everything starts and pivots off of walking. Even walking can be damaging though, so we have to be careful. Like we just think that walking is just walking and it's not a big deal. It can be a big deal. And to start to walk 10,000 steps and 15,000 steps and 20,000 steps, it's a lot. And it could have some wear and tear. And if we're going to walk with a weighted vest, it could potentially have a little bit more wear and tear. So we want to amp up our walking appropriately. If currently you usually take about 4,000 steps a day or 5,000 steps a day, then bring it up slowly over time. And don't necessarily try for 10,000 and be like, oh, I'm going to do 10,000 every day for a month. Your feet are probably going to hurt, or your back's going to hurt, and you will probably not be able to sustain that amount of steps for a long time. If you want to increase the difficulty of your walk, if you want to amplify your walk, this is something I've talked about on my YouTube channel before, but we have like a weighted walk with a weighted vest or a sled. Walking with a sled can be tremendous. Most people don't really consider a sled much for cardio training, but there's so many different aspects and so many different things that you can do with a sled. So number one is you can go on like a 10-minute walk with a sled. Now, walking around your neighborhood with a sled, might be rattling around, might be making kind of a decent amount of noise or whatever. But as you're walking past, the noise will trail off and it shouldn't be too huge of a deal. It will seem the loudest probably to you. And with the amount of leaf blowers that are everywhere and weed whackers, it shouldn't be bothering people too much. And you can just walk straight for like 10, 12, 15 minutes, and it will absolutely crush you. It'll be very, very, very difficult. If you don't have that much space to walk that way, you can just walk back and forth. Hopefully you have somewhere where you can walk with a sled for 30 yards back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Amazing an amazing type of cardio. And what better way of spending time doing cardio in working on like forward propulsion, forward momentum. You're working all the muscles that would be involved in like sprinting. You're working all the muscles that would be involved in normal walking or walking up a hill. And so the sled can be amazing. You can walk forwards with the sled, sidewards, backwards, whatever words you can kind of think of, you can walk with it. You can also utilize the sled for some upper body stuff as well. So this is where you can row with the sled, you can bench press with the sled, you can do a lot of different activities with a sled. Another thing you can do is to find a trail. Go on a hike, go on a trail. If you're going to go on a hike, always make sure you have appropriate clothing and always make sure you have appropriate hydration. Whatever amount of liquid that you want to bring with you, bring more. And whatever amount of liquid somebody else wants to bring with them, make sure they bring more. Make sure you and everybody that you go with has proper clothes and proper stuff. You guys know I'm not a huge fan of sunscreen, but it may be needed because if you're walking at certain times of day, it just might be necessary. Otherwise, you're going to get fried. And also, even more so than sunscreen would be appropriate clothing. Make sure you have appropriate clothing to protect you from either the sun, the wind, the cold, the heat, whatever it may be, because that's going to be really important. Having a good supply of water, in addition to probably throwing some salt or some hydration packets in your drink that you have, is going to be really important. But I think that when it comes to walking, I think walking is amazing. But when it comes to like a hike, I don't really think, or even just walking hills, like forget about the hike for a second, because a hike is like a little bit more specific, I guess. But just walking any types of hills, I can't even really think of a better activity than that. I actually think that's the number one and strongest exercise and movement that somebody could do. You know, we could say like, oh, well, a squat, you know, is really powerful, or deadlift, or a burpee, or like you could think of a lot of things, and we could say sprinting, all these things, right? But like, what could you continuously do for a long ass period of time? You could walk for a really long ass period of time. And you can even walk some hills for a really long period of time. Like you probably do that for like 3 or 4 hours, right? But imagine 3 or 4 hours of any type of squatting, you're going to be like totally dead. 3 or 4 hours of sprinting, you're going to be like, you're going to be completely useless the next couple days. 3 or 4 hours of walking, if it was continuously uphill, obviously you'd be fried too. But you get my idea here, is that you can put one foot in front of the other quite easily for a very, very long period of time.
So Mark, you have been loving wearing these Pluvas for a long time. Why is it that you like these shoes that look like this?
I'm trying to get my feet to be jacked. You know, I think it's funny how sometimes people will, when I wear these shoes, they're like, oh, those are different. And I'm like, well, maybe you should blame God, because this is the human foot. This is the way that it looks. But Pluvas are awesome because it's going to allow you to train your feet and train your toes and allow for that toe spread, because you got the 5-finger toe thing going on. It's like put on a glove for your feet. It feels amazing.
It's like walking around with toe spacers. You know, we've been working on our feet for a long time now. You always hear the benefit of people talking about like these tribes who have gone without shoes forever, and they have this toe space and have these amazing feet. And these shoes will allow you to just passively get that back by walking around.
You don't realize what a disadvantage you're at when your foot is all clumped together from the football cleats or soccer cleats or whatever else you were wearing when you were young. And so it's nice to be able to splay your toes. In addition to that, though, one thing I love about Pluva is the fact that it's not a regular barefoot shoe. I do love barefoot shoes as well, but it also has appropriate padding. And when you're stepping on some crazy pebbles and rocks and different things, like when I'm out on a run, some terrain is a little different than others. I don't have to be worried that I'm going to get some sort of stabbing, crazy thing happening to my foot, because it has an appropriate amount of cushion underneath the foot.
And guys, Pluva has a lot of different styles on their website. I think one of the newest styles they just came out with, which is a little bit more of a rigorous shoe, is the Strand ATR. It's not these are the Strands, but the ATRs have a little bit more. If you want to go hiking with them, you totally can.
Those are amazing. If you go out, throw those on and go sprint on a field, and your feet feel so strong, grabbing the grass and being able to actually grab the ground with your foot feels amazing.
I'm more of a chill guy with my Pluva, so I like the Zen slip-ons, but that's the thing. With Pluva, there's a lot of different options. So if you head to pluva.com and use code POWERPROJECT, you'll be able to save 15% off your entire purchase. And they also have toe socks. Their 5-finger toe socks are no show, so check those out too.
So I think that hiking and trails and stuff like that is incredible. And because this topic is a little bit more geared towards people that are chubsters, when I was a chubster, trying to find some hills was definitely something that I did often. And when I couldn't find a hill, I would just go on a treadmill and walk at an incline. Put the incline up to 6 or 8 or 10 or 12, and walk even at 2.5 miles an hour. The slower walk up a pretty decent grade is going to get your heart rate up probably a lot higher than trying to walk at like 4 miles an hour on a flat surface. So those are all really good options. And I have a lot of friends that they don't mind doing some of these things that I'm mentioning, even though they don't love cardio. They'd rather be training. They'd rather be lifting heavy. And let's not forget about some sprints. So let's go over this just a little bit. But, so much is made of sprinting, and so much is made of like how careful you should be when you sprint. After going through this and messing around with sprinting for a little bit now, I don't think you need to be that careful with sprints. What I think you need to be very cautious of how hard you sprint. So if it's been a long time since you sprinted, it doesn't make any sense to go out there and try to put in like 100% effort. you are most likely going to get hurt doing that. But that should be pretty obvious to you. It's pretty obvious with anything else, right? If you just tried 100% of your max on a bench press and you haven't bench pressed even in 3 months, even if you're an excellent bench presser, that's a big mistake. That could be a potentially catastrophic injury. So I don't think that we have to say, hey, be careful every time you bench press. I just think we need to just not be so dumb. Like, that's just stupid. We shouldn't be thinking of 100%, kind of stay more in like a, for your first couple times out, if you haven't run at all, that's something to consider. But what I would say is, let's try something really, really simple. Like, let's just try to find a decent hill, and why don't you walk up it? Walk up it fast. Walk up it with aggressive, strong pace with a decent stride. How long did that take you? What's your breath like? Walk back down the hill. Can you walk back up it again? If you feel like, okay, I'm fit enough to handle maybe like a little jog. Well, that's when you can, set your watch, and you can kind of look at your watch and say, let me try like a 10-minute mile pace up this hill. And then you give that a go and maybe do a couple sets of it. So stuff like that is going to be really valuable. And when it comes to sprinting for bigger people, you want to sprint really short distances too. I shouldn't even say sprint. I should say run. Just run. Don't go out there and don't sprint. That's why people do talk about being cautious with it, just because I think they think the term sprint, they think that means all out, and I guess it does. So instead of sprinting, just run. But nothing more than like 30 yards. Nothing more than 20, 30 yards. Don't try to maintain any sort of top speed. Don't even get to top speed. But the reason why that type of cardio is so good is that it's been shown, in many studies, to just burn tremendous amounts of calories. And if you can start to gain that skill to be able to sprint, the faster that you get, the more and more your body is going to change. And it's going to change severely. The way that your body looks is going to change severely. Like, I'm excited for people to see, and I'm excited for myself to see the changes in my body. I haven't really been sprinting that long yet, and I haven't been able to really run that fast quite yet. I've been getting faster, but there's going to be a point where I'll be fast enough to get some training adaptations that will just be insane. And I think a lot of you guys can start to reach some of that too, even though it might sound like it's pretty far away. The adaptations will happen fairly quickly. A couple other easy things to do is med ball stuff for cardio. Cardio for fat guys is some med ball throws are great. So you throw a med ball. You can do a scoop throw where you put the ball between your legs and you squat down, and then you give it a heave-ho back up and over behind your head. And you can do a couple explosive movements to that, but you can chuck it and then you can jog to it. You can chuck it and then you can jog to it. You do about 3 of those. Then you can do a chest pass. You do about 3 of those, and you press it as hard as you can, and then you jog to it. You pick it up. You press it as hard as you can. You jog to it. Now, if you're 350, 400, 500 pounds, then maybe you just walk fast to it, because when you're over basically 300 pounds, it's just a tremendous, I'm not saying that you can't run. I'm not saying, like, I don't want to dampen anybody's hopes or dreams. Like, you can do anything and you can adapt to anything. But if you haven't run in a long time and you're a bigger person, that stress on your feet and your calves and your lower leg just is probably not worth it. So chuck the ball hard and chuck the ball fast. Obviously, get yourself used to that and accustomed to that as well. We don't want to just go full blast with that, but just use like a 6 to 10 pound medicine ball and throw that son of a bitch far and throw it kind of hard. And in between, you can just, if you're a bigger person, just walk to it. If you are a little bit more fit, or you are a bigger person that has been accustomed to some jogging, some running, then you can jog to it every single time. So I would say some scoop throws where you throw it backwards. I would say a couple chest passes, do about 3 of those. Then do right arm, like a shot put, left arm like a shot put, do 3 for each side on that, and then do some twists where you throw, from the left side, and then some twists where you throw from the right side, and you do 3 for each side of those, and you're done. Like that's a really good amount of work. Maybe just at the end, maybe you do 3 more where you just throw it as high as you possibly can. But you just got in like a crazy amount of work in a short period of time. You're going to be breathing hard. It's an opportunity to get outside, to get more sunlight, because we don't have to be inside to chuck around a med ball. And it's giving you're getting more steps in, and just, trying to find ways to get outside and to get some sunlight. The last thing I'll mention here for some cardio is any sort of game or sport. If you got a game or sport, then you don't really need to do cardio, right? Like the game or sport is cardio. So if you like to play soccer, and you can go play soccer somewhere, playing these sports can sometimes be really, really rough. So you have to be cautious a little bit. You can't really just jump right back into them. Something like baseball or softball or something I wouldn't consider to be enough activity. Soccer, at least there's decent amount of like running going on in that. Basketball would be a great activity. I know some people gotten into pickleball. I see a lot of people getting hurt with pickleball, so make sure you have some good resilience. Work on some plyos and stuff. As ridiculous as it sounds, to work on some plyometric stuff for pickleball, it'd probably be necessary so you don't get hurt. On the topic of plyometrics, if you're following along with some of the stuff that I'm doing, you can check out my YouTube channel, and I'm introducing not really a lot of plyos necessarily, or just plyos, but I'm introducing some track strategies, some drills. So if A skips and B skips, and I don't even know how to do some of those, but you got like the Deion Sanders primetime, where he's kicking his legs forward. You have things like high knees. You got the karaoke things that you do with your feet. All those kind of drills, all those things you did back in football or whatever sport you played, jogging forward, jogging backwards, jogging sideways, kind of that, playing defense in a basketball game where you're sliding, shuffling, sideways. All of that stuff can be a great form of cardio training as well. And just some simple plyos of the med ball, like I talked about, and some jumping. Jumping can be great, just some pogo hops. So you can also, rather than like spending a bunch of time doing cardio, you can do some pogo hops in between a bench press. And all that's going to do is stimulate your central nervous system further and probably help you to lift more. It's probably not going to be to your detriment, since you're maybe like bench pressing in between, doing the pogos. You got lower body in between the upper body stuff. And on a lower body day, you could potentially do some push-ups in between your squats, depending on your fitness level and depending on what you're able to handle. Jumping rope, you can't ever undersell jumping rope. You also have rope flow. So rope flow is really nice because you don't have to jump over the rope, but it's a great activity and a decent form of cardio. But I would kind of I'd batch that in with walking. It's about as simple as walking. I know you can amplify the rope flow and you can make it more difficult, but so these are all different things of cardio that you can do. And then obviously we just have traditional cardio. Let's not forget the power. Let's not forget how many people have lost a lot of body fat over the years, just simply going on a treadmill, maybe putting that bastard up on a little bit of an incline and just walking on it. One of the types of cardio I do currently is I hop on a bike and I do Peloton workouts. And have Tunde train me. She trains the shit out of me. And it's pretty brutal. We do different types of sprints on there. We do Tabatas, which is like 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off. Those are absolutely horrible. My legs are fried the entire time. I will probably do one of those workouts tomorrow. And I've been doing those about 3 days a week for the last couple of weeks. and I'm really liking some of the improvements I see there. So Peloton makes a treadmill. They have a bike. They also just have an app that gives you some really great workouts. So all those things can be something that you can do. The Stairmaster has some powers over the other ones. I think a Stairmaster is just a real bitch. You know, I guess maybe if we were to say, hey, you put the treadmill on a good incline, it's going to be equal to the Stairmaster. But the Stairmaster rules, I think the Stairmaster is one of the best. One of the things about this type of cardio that we're talking about here, it's all kind of zone 2-ish, other than some of the sprints I talked about, but they're all sort of zone 2-ish, and your heart rate shouldn't be blasted through the roof, and this should put you in a good fat burning zone, meaning that you're basically oxidating fat during a lot of these training sessions. What's nice about it when you utilize a cardio piece in a gym is that it is something that is you get to set it up 100% the way you want to set it up. It's not the same as like trying to find a hill to sprint. There's so many variables when you're outside, so many variables going on when you're doing other activities. But when you're dead set on a treadmill and you're like, I'm going to be on here for 40 minutes and I'm going to set the incline up, at 10. Well, the incline's set at 10 and you're walking at 3 miles an hour the whole time, and you get to just stay right there, and you get to get into zone 2 very quickly, and then you get to actually stay there for a while, as opposed to when you're outside and you're trying to get yourself to zone 2, it might take a while. And then even when you get yourself into zone 2, a certain song might come on, you might get fired up, might start to run a little faster, and now you're kicked out into zone 3. And so the training variables get to be controlled a lot better when you do cardio training. Last thing I'll mention, maybe Ryan has a couple of questions still, but the last thing I'll mention here on some of what I'm explaining about cardio is, let's also not forget about an elliptical. An elliptical is one of those things that gets laughed at. People kind of tease about it and make fun of it. I know CrossFit made fun of it for a while, but look how much CrossFit gets made fun of too, right? The elliptical is an absolutely incredible invention. And for those people that maybe can't get out and sprint and run and do some of these things, the elliptical is a really wonderful place to bring up some of your cardiovascular training. It's also a great place to just simply burn some calories. And you're also getting in some rotation. A lot of times you have your arms kind of going back and forth like yay as you're doing it. So I'm a huge fan of the elliptical, and they made them a lot better. The more recent ones they've made, I've seen them have like a little bit better gait, or it has a better adjustment where you can adjust the gait to your liking so your feet can get further away from each other and stuff like that. Because sometimes it just feels like this short little choppy cycle. It's almost like you're on a bike. But yeah, they have improved those a lot. So those are all awesome options for cardio training. And I would say like it would be a great idea for nearly everybody to get in 2 to 3 cardio training sessions per week. The 10-minute walks are sort of a bonus on top of all that. But I guess, if you're fat enough, you can count the 10-minute walks as your cardio.
Do you think that cardio kills your gains? Because I've heard people like Stan efforting, talking about some stuff like that. And, I've heard other fitness influencers say that. So do you think that that's a legitimate concern with cardio?
The rhino's, the rhino's as smart as they come. He knows what he's talking about. And yeah, you could be sending signals to your body that aren't great, but I would say that's a little bit more of like a cardio bunny type of situation where that's the primary thing that somebody's using just for weight loss. We have to always remember that exercise is only so effective for weight loss. And even if you're talking about cardio training, you would think, I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to do a bunch of cardio and I'm going to lose weight. A lot of times what happens is that the signaling of cardiovascular training is not very anabolic to the system. It's not something that's going to promote muscle mass. So therefore, it's not going to be something that's going to really improve your metabolism, it is something where I've said often that cardio is training for right now. So cardio is burning calories literally for right now. And yes, there is a little postprandial period that you'll actually still burn some calories and maybe burn some fats and stuff like that as well, depending on the type of cardio that you did. But when you work on and you hone in and focus on building muscle, you actually end up with like a double positive, because you just worked out, you just lifted, you burned calories, but then you also sent a signal to your body for protein muscle synthesis that will help you to build more muscle mass, which will help you burn more calories for the future. And so usually what people are talking about when they're talking about, like if you look at like a runner, like long distance runner, a lot of even men that are long distance runners, a lot of times they have kind of a horrible physique. And you're like, shit, well, I don't want to look like that guy. It's because of the signaling. They don't have a signal. They're never using like a big hammer. They're just continually kind of like, tapping at stuff all day long and sort of annoying their body, rather than like that big bolus of something that signals the body to actually grow. They're signaling the body to like continually break down. And I think your hormones can become like a wreck. But again, that is mainly reserved for people that are just really overdoing it. For the people that are like running a lot and they maybe need to cool it with some of the running, and they maybe need to switch things up a little bit. For the most part, I haven't seen that personally I would say the exception would be like if you're really out of shape. Like if your cardiovascular is so poor because you're not used to doing it, that when you go to use the elliptical, your heart rate shoots up to like 170 and you're not even really going that hard on there. That person during that physical activity, they are probably going to be burning through some muscle rather than just burning some carbohydrate, just burning some fat, which is the reason why it's a decent idea to check your heart rate. And I would even go as far to wear a heart rate monitor just for a little while, because technically, if you're in this zone 2, you should be in a fat oxidation state. You should be burning through fat. You should not be burning through muscle, at least from most of the information that I have. And that style of cardio should actually be beneficial to your gains. It actually should be, and Stan has talked about this before as well, where he felt that walking was really good at being something that helps you to redistribute the nutrients, almost working as like a glucose disposal agent. And they even did a study where they had people do 10-minute, this is where the 10-minute walk came from. The 10-minute walk came from a study that showed a couple 10-minute walks a day was more powerful than the drug metformin, which is saying something, because metformin is actually very powerful and is really good does a really good job of what it's supposed to do. But in this study, the 10-minute walks were superior at helping with like nutrient partitioning. And I believe the main thing it was more powerful with was regulating your glucose after a meal. So walking can be really beneficial, and walking is basically usually just in zone 1. So I think guys like Stan are a little bit more of a fan of, let's just do zone 1. We know we're not overdoing it there. And if we want some cardiovascular adaptations, let's just go right to zone 4 and 5. So that's where Stan might do the 20 rep squats, right? Like that's just burns everything out like crazy. Or Stan might do some stairs where he's doing them as fast as he can. Or doing some sprints. Stan also works with some professional athletes and stuff like that too. And so he's not going to, have a professional athlete or somebody that's getting stronger or a bodybuilder, going out on like a 6-mile run, because again, for that person, they're not like, for Nick Bear, a 6-mile run is just cake. For me, 3 or 4 mile run is cake, but Nick Bear can run a 6-minute, he can run 6 miles, and he could probably, have a 9-minute or 8-minute mile pace, and his heart rate's probably like 130. His heart rate's probably super chill while he's going pretty damn fast. So what does that register on a guy like that? Well, that clearly isn't something that's like breaking down a bunch of protein for him. That's clearly not making him skinny fat. Nick Bare is the total opposite of skinny fat. The exception being, though, that when Nick Bare has really prepped for marathons, he really has stripped down. Like he stripped down not just body fat, but he stripped down body fat and muscle. But fortunately, Nick Bare is smart and he knows how to kind of work his way back out of it. So he got down to like 175 or 180 pounds or something like that. And then he works his way back up to 200, 205 and things like that. But even he, at his fitness level, even though even for him, he's not totally immune to losing muscle mass from overdoing cardio.
I have no further questions.
All right, well, hopefully you guys can figure out a way to be less fat with some of this information that I'm sharing. If you have any questions, throw them in the comments below. I'd love to continue to help you guys with this kind of stuff. And who knows, maybe in the next video, maybe I'll just talk about something old school. Maybe I'll talk about getting stronger. Let me know if you guys would be interested in that. Maybe I can just talk about how to bring up your squat, how to make your legs stronger, lower body stronger, bench stronger, whatever you want. Strength is never weak. This week is never strength. Catch you guys later.